doing whatever you personally need to do to calm your mind, whether it's going for a run and kind of pull yourself out of the situation you're in and think through, okay, what are the most important things and what should I make sure I don't do? And for me, that was stopping. All right. Welcome, everybody. Got another episode that's just Mason and I today. How's it going, Mason?
Things are good. I feel like business is in a pretty decent spot. We feel like we're really dialing in and focusing, which has been the result of tremendous failures over the years and some successes. And just enjoying the beautiful Colorado summer we've got here. How are things for you?
Great. Well, for this episode, there's plenty of business things that have gone wrong recently, which I'll hit on in a second. But yeah, overall, things are good. Working on a lot of bigger projects, kind of a big, longer term vision for how I want the business to grow. And it's a little gloomy here in June. This is probably the worst weather month in San Diego every year, but it's still nice.
Hey, that June gloom, it's worth it for the rest of the year. But
yeah. Anyways, although the prompt for this whole episode was I've had 10 properties, 10 contracts fall out of escrow to sell in the last somewhere between 45 and 60 days. And this has been a slower year already. And that's a big kick in the teeth. That is a lot of money that I was expecting to come back. That has not. And so, Mason, I know you had a rough patch last year, and I think a lot of people in the business are having rough patches. So we wanted to talk about how do you handle this when you get kicked in the teeth, when things go wrong or go wrong for an extended period of time. How do you handle it? How do you adapt? How do you prepare for this if it hasn't happened to you? Because it certainly will. And how do you make sure that the pressure and negativity doesn't cause you to make more bad decisions that then lead to more negative consequences? So that's really the today's show.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a good conversation, and bear with us today as we kind of navigate this of our kind of thought process around it, as well as the tactical advice that you can take and adapt to your own business and your own life to make it so where you can really determine what to do and how to do it in business. Because there's definitely times where, just like Dan was saying, at the end of last year, I was like, what am I doing here? And it felt very difficult, especially having this podcast and posting on social media, which I try to share everything that goes wrong too. I mean, I posted today on LinkedIn about a deal that I lost 43 grand on just a few weeks ago that, it's fine because I'm in a different position than I was in at the end of last year. But no, I think we're attempting to be as honest and transparent as useful to you guys as possible, because we've experienced it. Regardless of our successes, we've had plenty of failure in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this just isn't talked about enough. Not enough people acknowledge when things are going wrong. Things are always going wrong. I think that's just a normal, but there's always rougher seasons. And so I think this is really relevant right now because it's a rough market this year, but there's still plenty of people doing well.
Yeah, it is. So maybe we can kind of frame it of what the ideal scenario is with the way you kind of structure your finances and business and life, and then kind of unpack of what to do in those wrong cases. Because I feel like now, this is June of 2025 that we're recording this, I feel confident in the direction that business is going in to set this up. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I'm going to, take notes as we're going. So I can make sure that I'm applying it to my life. But I think one of the first things that you need to approach, within your business as you're creating things, because things are going to go wrong, and we'll talk specifically about that. But it's like you need money coming in consistently in some capacity to support your lifestyle and support your expenses. Otherwise, everything else just does not feel correct. I feel like a lot of times you hear that you need your back put against the wall. You need to put yourself in very uncomfortable situations in order to create the most profitable model that you can within a business. But I feel like, at the beginning of it, I would have so many deals, and I talk about it all the time of the sine wave of cash flow within this business. And I'm really trying to make it so where, even though there's going to always be those fluctuations, if I can have that cash cow that just feeds me a kind of standard return, I feel like everything that we're talking about, it doesn't become moot, but it almost becomes more like we're playing with house money and it's just upside as versus, downside. But Dan, kind of what are your thoughts there of like, am I approaching this in the wrong way of like, I think, uh, while we're going to be talking about a lot of negative things today, I feel like just hammering the point of like, you need something small and consistent and successful that you always have going no matter what, or you're not going to really succeed in business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mostly agree. I mean, you can always find exceptions, but generally that's helpful. And having the rental properties for me has been very helpful because those just about pay for my personal expenses. And not only that, but I had a big chunk of reserves from rental properties that didn't necessarily have to stay where they were, and so those have been helpful. So I agree with that. And then beyond that, you need more extra liquidity than you think you do. I think just always, because I've always been the one that has had more resources of my own and could have bought more deals myself and used less investor money and saved on interest, but it's really serving me right now in how conservative I've been with my own finances, with both cash and then unused lines of credit and both of those. So along with the steady income stream at the base, having more reserves than you think you need is really important.
And I know that's the answer that, or at least part of the answer that people might not want to hear because you want to bet on yourself. You want to be able to, and you have to take risks in business. But I think the thing is like, if you want to be in business for the long term, you need that savings account. You need that consistent income coming in that's going to allow you to have those stretches that are really fucking hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, last year, I've talked about it a little bit on the show, but I set up so many deals the wrong way at the beginning of this business. And, I'm still brand new into it, but I feel like I was so scared of taking on investor capital that the way I structured the deal had just tremendous upside for the investors and tremendous downside for me if things didn't go well. But historically, everything had gone well. And I thought it was my own just freaking genius as versus the market conditions that allowed so many of the successes I had to occur where I had over $700,000 in promissory notes that I had to pay off within a 3-month period of time. And that was something that as soon as I signed those agreements, I was terrified of because that's when Dan and I, pretty early on in mine and Dan's friendship of when we were working out together, I was like, dude, in like a year and a half from now or in a year from now, like things like it was always these 3 properties that I had that I'm like, dude, if I don't sell them, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then it happened I did not sell any of those properties within that period of time. And I had to come up with the money, and gratefully I was able to get, creative of, I had a good amount of money invested that I was able to take a line of credit out of that paid off one investor. I was able to take my own cash from another deal that mostly paid off another investor. And then with the other one, it was the same thing of just like my own cash being able to pay them off because I had remained so liquid and was setting myself up for the inevitable that I was going to have to pay these people off. And I think that there's a few lessons in there, which one, don't set up deals that is going to just put you in a position that one, you can't think or sleep because of the way you structured them. 2, make sure that you, if investors have skin in the game, like make sure they actually have skin in the game. I say this, I've never lost investor capital on any deal I've ever done, but that's not always the expectation. And so realize there's risks in every investment and, sometimes things won't go that way and you need to prepare for it and make sure you have the liquidity to be able to pay them off. And then most importantly, and I think this is kind of where the mindset issue comes in, is don't rely on projected profit because it will screw you over in the long run because you start operating as if that projected profit is realized profit. And it just isn't. I mean, Dan, you had 10 deals fall out of contract recently. I'm sure you were like kind of allocating your expenses of like just being like, okay, like whenever this comes in, I'll be able to do this, then the other thing. And it's just regardless of if it's conscious or subconscious, we have a tendency to do it because, I mean, you just want that win. You crave it. And it also kind of affects your dopamine response, where it's like, I don't feel anything whenever a deal sells. I'm just more like, oh, finally that happened. So now I can go do this next thing. But I'll pause for a second there, Dan. Let you dive in.
Yeah, there was a lot there, and much of what I'm thinking is along the same train of thought, so I'll try and avoid redundancy. But something that I can pull out of what he said and what is applicable to me too is, I have really cheap lines of credit, just like you were able to pull a line of credit against your stocks. For example, one of my rental properties, it's an 8% interest only line of credit. So, if I pull, I think I have like 40 grand on that pulled right now, and that's like 200 and some dollars a month. So it's really, really cheap. And so the only reason that, both of us are able to access extra liquidity that way is because we've bought nice assets along the way. And, with Mason more equities, with me rentals. So as soon as you're able to do that, that just creates more of a hedge because that rental property can pay for that line of credit easily. And so it's an extra hedge. And then, oh gosh, there was a lot of points I had there. I'm losing my train of thought, but the estimated profit thing is so true. I mean, I think of it as a spectrum, a percentage chance of close. And when you're under contract, if there's no non-refundable earnest, it's really not that big of a deal. When you pass the due diligence period and their earnest money is non-refundable, okay, it's a much higher probability, right? It's a spectrum as time goes on. But until it's closed and funded, it doesn't mean anything. It really, really does not, unless they're putting up a huge amount of non-refundable earnest money.
Yeah. I mean, and that right there is just, I see it so often. And I think this is what hooks people into this business is the coaches out there, people that are land flippers or land investors out there that said, just got another deal under contract, projected profit 60,000. Yet if you kind of follow along in the journey, you never see it happen. You never see that realized profit occur. And I think, one, there's just so many people that are really bad at this business where maybe they couldn't even, have the funds to actually take the contract down or anything like that. But two, it's just, God, whenever you're underwriting deals, I've gotten so much more pessimistic over the years. And yeah, it's market conditions in general, but it's me getting burned. It doesn't matter that I have 100+ successful deals. It's the handful of really bad ones, which have taught me more than any of the good ones ever have. And it's going in, and you need to be so ultra conservative with your underwriting in general, because I think whenever you start tying all this emotion and added complexity to what could be a complex transaction, even though a lot of these simple infill lot land flips aren't that complex, they might be though. I mean, we talk about that Denison, Texas deal that we funded that during, right after we acquired it, like the cost for development went from $0 to $13,000, and we're still holding that property because no one is willing to buy it. And we're going to sell it at a loss eventually. Like someone will buy it eventually. But if that's how we operated our business of, hey, if we were just consolidated into this one market that, everything changed overnight, and we had projected all this profit, so we had deployed just tremendous amounts of capital into deals and overextended and over-leveraged ourselves. I mean, you become toast. And that's a really, really scary thought in this business is like, everyone's like, well, there's just so much upside in land that you can never lose. And I'm like, dude, you're wrong. Like you can absolutely do deals that will end your financial life. And it's, if you allow your ego to creep in, and if you allow these assumptions of, one use case equaling another, because, and we can talk about some of these deals that have fallen out of contract, like, for you, Dan, of like, I'm sure you've had similar ones in similar markets that went exactly one way and they've gone a completely different way in this particular market. And if you assumed that it was going to go that way, you'd put yourself in a really, really tricky and challenging position.
Yeah, I got to tell a quick story pertaining to the infill lots can still have their challenges. I bought 5 contiguous lots in South Carolina almost a year ago. It was right after the 4th of July last year. And this wonderful realtor who I was told was competent told me we could sell them at 80 to 90,000, and I bought them for 40. So with all expenses, it was like 43. Did perk tests and a survey and stuff. Well, it turns out they're just shy of an acre collectively, and the zoning laws have changed since the original plat and subdivision was done. And even though there's a bunch of houses on 0.4 and 0.5 and 0.8 acre lots, you need an acre. And so these were non-buildable that I spent $47,000 on. Well, 11 months later, we've officially gotten the variance, and so they are now buildable. And so that's just another example of things that can go wrong with infill. So watch out for old neighborhoods with changed zoning.
Oh, yeah. Well, and, let's make it tactical kind of around the just the management of everything around this, where, we've talked a little bit about the idea of, having a good amount of reserves, which just takes time. I mean, that's the thing, is saving money, taking time, you accumulating assets that pay you every month, or you have a product or service within your business that's going to generate consistent revenue, bottom line revenue, like a profit on a regular basis, and then save as much of it as you possibly can. Never over leverage or over deploy your own resources. But I think also what we're talking about here is don't become too reliant on one income generating method within your business. Because I think that for both of us, as we've continued to grow and adapt our businesses, that the traditional land flipping model has not been like amazing for probably like the last year for me. I've had like good deals and stuff like that go through, but like it is nothing like what it used to be. And I can say it's not from like a lack of effort or a lack of, work that we're putting in. I feel like we're marketing more than ever. We're doing a lot, and we're not seeing the same results that we used to. Like, yeah, there's more competition. I actually think that the amount of land flippers out there is probably disrupting the market a little bit, at least in Florida. I don't know if you've pulled back or anything in Florida, but like from what we've seen, it's just changed a little bit. And I think the point I'm making is like, you don't want to diversify to the ends of the earth, but you need to make sure that you're actually, you're adaptable within business and have a few different revenue streams that are able to come in, because whenever the honey hole, dries up and you're not catching any more fish there, it can get really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, having, like I said, the rental properties and then land notes paying has been really helpful. I remember in 2022 when the main market I was in shut down all new water taps, all the land flips I had in process just froze, but I had a few new builds that had already started, and those really helped me because those still paid out. And so I agree with that. Now, there's some nuance to this, because I think one thing that people do that gets them in trouble is, like right now I'm working on buying bigger properties, subdividing them, selling them all on terms, kind of a small pivot. But I'm still keeping the small land flips going because that's what's made me money for years and years. And I don't want to stop that until, or really never, but too many people stop the thing that has made them money to make a small pivot in their business before making sure that small pivot works out. So, to Mason's point, you should have a couple different strategies within your niche. But don't stop what has made you money while you're layering on these other strategies. It would be foolish for Mason to totally stop his land business now that he's a realtor, thinking that he's going to have all these realtor clients tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that, for the land flipping thing, we're shifting markets a little bit more on the land flipping side of, we've done well in Colorado, but for what we're seeing in Colorado, that simple, small land flip, that hasn't really worked for us. We've got like a good pipeline of like, if we can ever get them at the right discounted price, it'll work for us eventually. But we're shifting markets a little bit because, okay, well, we've done, 12 months of pretty consistent, aggressive marketing, and we're not getting as many deals as we need to sustain the business. And so I think it's after getting enough data, it's like, okay, we've added this vertical integration into the business on the realtor side of thing to consistently bring in additional income and capitalize on all those leads that we've generated of being able to list those properties for them should they decide to work with us. But two, it's okay, well, if this market's not producing, we're not going to devote 100% of our time to this market anymore. We're going to devote 20% of our time to this market that even though it's historically produced for us, it's not right now because there are cycles in markets. And we're going to go to where, it's a better market and we still have a competitive advantage there. So we're going to a market in the Southeast that my sales manager has a tremendous amount of connections in and has a good amount of experience in and already understands it. So there's that kind of local competitiveness. But I think that kind of the point that I'm saying is like, we're never going to stop doing what works. But if it's not working in a particular market due to the conditions within it, then we're going to apply that model somewhere else, even though there's going to be a learning curve. I don't know, just to make sure that we're diversifying.
So this kind of takes us to one of the main topics of, how to handle it when everything's going wrong. And so this pertains to what you just said, Mason. So I'll get around to it. And amidst these rougher couple months for me, I made, I'm reading Poor Charlie's Almanac for the second time. I read it years ago, but wanted to read it now that I'm a bit older and have a bit more experience. And one thing he always talks about is inverting your thinking. And so, amidst a few of these especially bad weeks, I sat down and I thought, okay, well, what should I not do? And one of the biggest things on that list that stands out to me as pertaining to what you just said is stop marketing. Stop doing the things that'll ensure that I'm making money in 2, 3, 5 months. And so one of the biggest things that allows me to sit here and be calm and not feel like it's the end of the world is I took a ton of time. I really looked through all the markets that we're in and figured out, okay, what is still selling, right? You mentioned Florida. My Florida stuff is sitting mostly. It's sitting. But there's some markets in North Carolina that are still moving very, very well. And so I took a bunch of time to revamp our marketing, to make really specific lists and postcards, the best we've ever sent out. And we got a bunch of deals in a few of these neighborhoods. And I have, 5 or 6 lots under contract to sell in one neighborhood in North Carolina, all supposed to sell next month. And that has kept, the business going, or is keeping the business going, while all that Florida stuff and cash is just kind of stuck. Right. And so when things go wrong, doing whatever you personally need to do to calm your mind, whether it's going for a run or whatever, and kind of pull yourself out of the situation you're in and think through, okay, what are the most important things and what should I make sure I don't do? And for me, that was stopping marketing. And so it's been absolutely essential and has made sure that things keep going. And now we have a bunch of profitable flips in North Carolina.
Absolutely. And that right there of like, we're not telling you don't just pivot your business in some crazy way. Like the realtor thing, there's a few reasons I did that, beyond selling my own properties, which makes sense. But 2, I enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy it. It excites me. It is my least, profitable from like a revenue generating standpoint. Like I make the least amount of money per transaction that I'm doing. Granted, it's the most profitable from a return on investment, like actual capital, because I spend a little bit of money on, photos or video or whatever. But I enjoy it. Like it's fun for me. Like that's one of the main reasons behind it. And it covers my expenses. It covers my cost of living and my business expenses. But what Dan is saying, that what I really want to hammer home is, if what you're doing is not working and it's historically worked, you need to examine why it's not working. You can look internally all you want and be like, okay, well, this historically has worked. Like we've always gotten this many deals for this many mailers or direct, or cold calls or whatever. But it just hasn't really produced the same level of results in the last 9 months. We're not saying in the last fucking week. Like, well, Dan and I operate in months and years, for analyzing stuff just so we have at least some form of meaningful, metric or some statistic that can say, okay, this has changed. And then whenever it's changed, you apply that into markets that are still producing, because you're spread out just enough to where you have upside going on. But 2, you can start examining other markets in the country, because, the thing is, like, Redfin last week posted about how it's a buyer's market of, for the first time in a really, really long time, there's, way more sellers than there are buyers, like 500,000 more. And this is mostly pertaining to single family, but not in New York. It's in Miami, not in certain parts of the country where inventory is flying off the shelves. So make sure that you're, creating a system and a model that allows you to adapt whenever that particular external market condition is not working. And I think looking internally within your business, remember to like check in on and analyze the metrics that you have been holding yourself to in the data, because you'd be like, man, I haven't gotten a deal in 6 months. It's like, oh, well, you reduced your marketing spend by $10,000 a month for the last 6 months. So maybe there's a correlation there, because sometimes when things are going bad, like Dan was saying, of the easiest thing to do is like stop everything as versus continue whistling through the graveyard on and focus on what's continuing to work. And that's one of the hardest things to do, is identify what works and keep doing it no matter what cycle of the market you're in, and no matter how uncomfortable you're in.
Yeah. And I want to expand on kind of examining, is the whole concept dead, or is your specific system within it broken or obsolete? And so I saw somebody posted something about land flipping and the traditional model, whatever that means, is, just not working. And, to your point about cycles, I've had the best response and conversion rate on mail in this year that I've had in several years. And how much of that is because I took so much time making really nice branded mailers versus the market, I don't know. I think it's a mix of both. I think a lot of people have fallen off. That's my theory. I'm not sure. There's too many variables. But I don't think that the simple people wanting to just get rid of their property, that never ends, right? People who have inherited it and don't want to deal with it, back taxes, probate, just all the reasons that people sell at a discount, that hasn't stopped. And on the flip side of that, it takes 2 seconds to go on Zillow and look all over the country and still see that lots of land has sold all over the place in the last 30 days. So the concept isn't broken. That means something about how you're operating it is. And, sure, Florida's gotten really competitive and lots of places have, but it's not too competitive. And I still don't think it's comparable to trying to go direct to seller for single family homes or small apartments. And so I thought, okay, well, the concept's not broken. There's still people that want to sell and will sell at a discount. There's still buyers that want land. So I need to fix the operations. And for us, that was really driving our working on sales training, and then also revamping our marketing, and then also thinking about our online presence, where we've got Better Business Bureau, Trustpilot, a bunch of Google reviews. It's making a huge difference, by the way. We've gotten so many mailer calls because of our Google profile. And so anyways, that was a long way of saying, whatever business you're in, you need to examine, is the whole concept dead, right? Is the model not working? Do people not want my product anymore? Or is it just my system within this domain is no longer working and needs modified?
No, I think that was really well said, honestly, because it's that internal, external. And the only way that you're able to know what's going on is you have to keep a pulse on both. You have to be aware of your operational metrics that you have going on and how effective you are within this business. And you need to keep a pulse on the market, because anecdotal or not, I see, and I'm in on all these different Facebook land investor, land flipper groups, and everyone only talks about Florida. And seeing that and seeing how saturated it's become, you can still get deals out there. Like, of course you can. But the market's constricted a little bit externally. And then you look at the competition, and regardless of if they're not real competition, they're frustrating landowners so much that it makes it so where it's just much harder to get a deal. And so I think it's always that ebb and flow, internal, external, be able to kind of, pivot and adapt if necessary, depending on the market conditions, or triple down, because more volume is typically going to be your answer, in terms of growing in your business. But you also have to be realistic with yourself of, okay, am I just digging myself into a deeper hole right here? And I think that's where it gets really difficult to determine, because I can tell you last year, like, I was like, dude, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because it was so stressful, but I kept going. And I think with that, it becomes interesting I feel like I haven't become more conservative with the amount of marketing that I'm doing, but I have been much more selective and conservative with the types of deals that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And this is especially for large deals. I say this, I canceled a deal this week. I terminated a deal. I forfeited my earnest money. I'd already spent, a couple thousand on due diligence on it, and it just didn't pencil. Um, Maybe it would have penciled depending on how much value add I did. But for me, I'm like, I would rather place the asymmetric bets, on smaller deals, continue to have cash flow coming in, figure out what really, really works, and not put myself in another position where I force a deal to get done because I think that, my more liberal underwriting, at the time, whenever I was feeling whatever I was feeling like, is going to save me. And so we're still doing deals that might be considered risky. Like, I feel like the gold mine is what I'm most excited about right now. But to me, it's like a set and forget it. Like, I'm using all of my own capital. I'm not using anyone else's capital on it. But, it could be a, 30, 40, a 30x profit. Well, maybe not 30x profit, 12, 15x profit deal for me. But the way I look at it is like, these are the type of bets that I'm willing to make where it's like, if it goes completely wrong, like the amount of loss that I take is completely insubstantial. So realize here, like, the irony of what I'm saying about projected profit, where I don't anticipate this profit coming in or anything like that. But what I will say is, whenever I'm doing these deals that like seem very exciting, the downside is just not there for me. Of like, I'm not stressed of. It's like going to the casino, and like, once you've made the money, put your initial investment back in your pocket and start playing with house money. And those are the type of deals that I'm really, really seeking out. Of you continue to focus on building the business that works and is profitable and consistent and low risk. And then whenever I'm taking the risks, I don't care anymore. And I feel like that's not how I historically operated, where I took risks on deals because I needed those deals to go through in order to maintain a profitable business. As now, versus now, where I'm like, dude, if this happens, it's fantastic. And if it doesn't, I don't care. And those are the type of risks that I'm taking. So I guess kind of within that, we can kind of stay on this flow for a little bit, Dan, of risk tolerance within business, and how are you deciding what deals are actually worth even pursuing anymore?
Well, you said several things there that I really want to highlight. And what you said about you'd rather walk away from a few thousand in earnest money than potentially buy a bad deal that causes you a lot of stress. And I'm actually doing that too. There's a deal in Florida. We paid for the entire quiet title process, and it was a good deal, say 9 months ago. But I don't know. Florida in this area has slowed down so much. It's not as if there's a bunch of comps that are lower, but I don't know. It could take a long time to sell, and I'd rather lose like $4,000 than take the risk. And there's times I haven't made that decision, and those have been big, big headaches. And so I strongly agree with that. And on the flip side, to your point about can't lose deals, we bought one all in. It was $37,800, and this was for 40 acres, working well, septic, transformer off the pole, stub to an old mobile home, and mobile home was purged of the property. And tomorrow, it's projected. No, I think you already wired the money, so I think we're good. But it's selling at 90. Now I'm selling with 40K down and 50K for carried. I'm carrying 50K at 10%. But deals like that are just so good. It's like it cuts through everything else. Like, just do fewer deals, more like that. If I did one of those a month, I mean, that's a lot of money, a lot of a strong balance sheet really quick there. And so all that to say, the way that I'm approaching this is just like you said, looking for these bets where there's just really no downside or just very minimal downside compared to the upside. So I mentioned the North Carolina market where we're buying a whole bunch of lots in one subdivision. Well, I knew that there was just no way that I could lose money on those. And there was potentially huge upside. These are nice finished lots, flat, nice houses, buying for next to nothing. Between 4 and 12,000 for these things. And like, there's just no way to lose. There's a big buyer who owns like 50 lots in the subdivision. And I knew worst case, I could sell it to him at least for what I got him for. And so bets like that, where there's little to no downside and tremendous upside, I think are really the key.
And that's what I want to hammer home, is what Dan said there of when we're saying stuff like we can't lose money, like we're saying that with pretty near 100% confident of what Dan's talking about there, of like our kind of gauge in Colorado for well, septic, and electric extension. Like you're looking at 50 to 75 grand right there in improvement value. Which what's the value of something? It's whatever someone would pay for it. Yeah, whatever. But in general,
in that case,
yeah.
What are the actual cost? It's well below replacement cost,
And that right there are the type of bets that we're trying to make. Why am I buying this gold mine in Alaska? Because the equipment that comes with it is worth more than the purchase price. Where if I need to, I can sell a freaking excavator on Craigslist for 100 grand, or a bulldozer for, or, I could offer all of the equipment that comes with it for 10 grand each at, 1% of market value. And I'm able to get all of my capital that I invested back in it. And the same thing with the type of land deals that I'm pursuing. How do I ensure that, the value is what it is? And to be honest, like, fingers crossed, it's become a bigger pain in the ass than we expected. But this timber deal that we're doing in South Carolina right now, where I don't have any difficulty assuming the end buyer will close on it, but the fact that it was based on inventory of the cost or of how much the lumber company is going to make on the timber on the property makes me feel really, really confident in the deal. Yeah, the market will fluctuate just a little bit here and there, but not that much. And so those are the type of bets that we're looking at of how do we make it so where we just cannot lose? Or if we do lose, if Dan's wrong and you risked what? You said you're buying these for like 4 to 5 grand each, right?
Yeah, very little.
So you're barely paying any money for them. And at the end of the day, like if you lost all of it, if you couldn't sell it for what you bought it for, you didn't risk that much capital. And that's what I'm really trying to avoid, is risking, to me, anything over about 50 grand as capital. I'm not willing to risk on a single deal that, doesn't have just absolute ridiculous 100% upside. So, it's, I think, growth in the business, but also just trying to really be far, far, far more risk averse than I was maybe a couple of years ago getting into this.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, everything is in cycles. Like you said, Mason, individual markets, the macro economic outlook, everything's in cycles. And so if interest rates plummeted and the government ramped up quantitative easing, I might say, okay, time to be a little more liberal in our valuations. But that is not the environment we're in right now. We are in quite the opposite. And how far will it go? I don't know. And so one more thing, just to make this really tactical, that I'm doing just as a precaution, I kind of sat and I made my list of what not to do and then also what to do. And I thought, okay, going through the reasons why these properties fell out of contract, it's a mix. Some of them were just the individual buyers. Some of them were, nuanced zoning issues. Some of them were fear of the market, and a couple of them were not sure. But I thought to myself, we know that generally it's become worse out there, and it's harder to sell. And it's the beginning of summer, just about next week or in 9 days. And generally, the end of the year is really slow. And I don't want to take the risk of getting to the end of the year. The market gets worse, and I'm in a worse position. And so I am selling my duplex in Ohio because Ohio is still very constricted on inventory. It's not making me much of a return. My return on equity is terrible. It doesn't have much tax benefits. It doesn't really cash flow much. It's just appreciated a lot. So great. I'm going to take those cards off the table in a market that I can still sell, at the highest prices they've ever been there based on everything I'm seeing. And I'm just going to have that as a safety margin, because I would rather get to the end of this year and things go well and I'm like, shoot, I didn't need to sell this, than have the reverse of that happen, get to the end of the year, the market gets way worse, and oh shit, I'm in a bad position because nothing has sold, right? And so I'm willing to again, that's another form of a bet in my mind. It has more potential upside than downside. And so that's another thing I'm doing just to put myself in a safe position.
The beauty of doing that is, cash is always king. I feel like people get really stressed if they're not deploying all of their own cash into deals all the time and it's making them a return. But the thing is, whenever you're liquid and one of these ridiculous upside potential deals come in, because there were times where like the idea of deploying 30 grand for the the mine and then 25 grand retainer for the realtor that's selling the property for me, where I wouldn't have been willing to deploy 55,000 into one of my own deals because I was so illiquid. And now that I'm more liquid, I'm like, I feel comfortable doing it, but I'm also not going to allow myself to, allow my business bank account to get below six figures because I don't like that feeling. I don't like deploying down to $0 in my bank account of if I owe someone money for something, I can send the money immediately. Or if I have a deal that comes across my table that I can't pass up on, that I can do it. Or I have the ability to go get more traditional financing because I can go put a substantial down payment down, or whatever it might be, like being able to have, like we talk about, and Dan and I talk about it all the time, just amongst each other of, dude, liquidity is always an issue. And we say that as people that, compared to a lot of the population, don't have liquidity problems, but we view ourselves as having liquidity problems because we pass up on so many deals that have, the principles and, establish the investment thesis that we really love. Like these owner finance deals where, buy for 50% of market value, sell for 100% with 10% down, where you still, have a good amount of money that you have that's just deployed and gone. But if you can make that return over the next 20, 30 years, like those are the type of deals we're looking to do. And the only way you can do them is if you have the cash to actually do them and you feel comfortable having that much capital deployed, not needing it to come back. And I think that's one of the main things of, like, when things go wrong, it's really nice whenever all the deals that you currently have going, you don't need to close because you've set yourself up and put yourself in a position that it's just not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's well said. Let's see. What else? Anything else you want to say about how to handle it when times are tough?
I think the one additional thing I'll add on to it is, I put in my notes here of expense creep of, we talked about what to spend money on, but not what not to not spend money on. Make sure that whatever you're spending money on and whatever you're spending your time on is actually directly correlated to making money, because, and I mean, it adds up of, like, I'm not trying to be like, stop eating avocado toast and going to Starbucks, but analyze your finances. Make sure that you're not subscribed to a bunch of really freaking expensive software that like you don't need in your business. Make sure that you are spending all of your money on marketing dollars and really nothing else beyond that, because you can start allowing things to creep in, start going to conferences or events that you really don't need to, that aren't going to actually add value, and make sure that, like, whatever it is you're doing is devoted towards the now. If you are in a crunch when things are going really bad, because you'd be surprised, like, how quickly you can turn things around. If you're like, okay, I need to make 25 grand in the next month, what you would do and how you would hustle to make that happen. But don't overextend yourself on the stuff that you don't need to be spending your time and money on. So I think that's something that you should be doing all the time. Make sure that, like, if you go to an event or you go to a conference or you go to a meetup or you go just spend time with one person, you're like, did this add any value to either of our lives or to my life in any capacity? Is this going to make me money? Then potentially exit it out, because time is so limited that it's just one of the most valuable resources. So don't let expense or time creep come in where it's not warranted. But yeah, that's kind of the last thing I wanted to add on to what we discussed today.
Yeah, I think that's important, and you pretty much hit the nail on the head. So let us know what you think, guys. Do you like these episodes where Mason and I are just talking about what we're doing, how we're handling it, and kind of extrapolating it out to the audience? Let us know in the comments. But until next time, Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkost with the Big Picture Blueprint signing off.